We're shooting the new 22 hotness, the Vudoo 360. Precision rimfire is probably by far one of the funnest competitive shooting sports I have participated in. Seriously, it is just a lot of fun. Precision rifle in general is a lot of fun, but then precision rimfire was even more fun because it's a little bit less expensive, even though the gear is super expensive, but at least the ammo prices are a little bit lower. And you know, it's not as loud, you can have conversations, you're challenging yourself just as much. It's just a really, really fun time. So if you've never checked out Precision Rimfire, I do have a couple of videos on Precision Rimfire matches that you can check out in the cards up there. But they are absolutely a blast. And one of the pieces of equipment that you will see at these matches is high quality rifles like this guy from Vudoo Gunworks. This is the Vudoo V22, but this one is the 360, which means it is a 3-lug action, 60-degree throw. We'll get into that here in just a moment. My name is Dave Tim from Guns and Tactics. Thank you guys very much for spending a few minutes of your day with me checking out my Vudoo V22 360. Now, this is probably not going to be the shortest of my videos, but the way I look at it is if you're looking to drop, you know, $2,500, $3,000 on a 22 rimfire, you probably want to be pretty informed about what you are investing in. So this is going to be more of an in-depth, informative review. Now, I have previously reviewed the Vudoo Gunworks V22. You can check that video out up there. And that gun is back there, the old Blue Thunder now. And we'll be comparing it. That's the traditional 2-lug 90-degree action, which I actually still love that rifle. That thing has been a beast. When I reviewed that rifle, I basically said, I'm going to keep it, I'm going to buy it, and they sent me an invoice, and I bought that gun. I loved it so much. This gun here is provided as a media sample. Macmillan did help me out with the stock. You can check out my review of the Macmillan U1 stock right up there, but I absolutely love these stocks for my precision guns, and I'm running pretty much this stock on my centerfire, my rimfire rigs. This is my favorite stock to date. So again, you can check that video out in the card. But you didn't come here to learn about the stock, but just in case you did, you can stay, learning more about the content. But you came to see about this guy right here, which is the Vudoo Gunworks 360. I am going to put chapter markers in the description below so you can check those out for different specific topic areas of the review. If you're interested in one specific area or want to come back as a reference, make sure you check those out in the description. Before we get into the review, if you guys like the content, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button so you stay up to date. Notification bell, all that stuff, and the like or leave a comment really does help us put this video out in front of more eyeballs on the algorithm. Now, last year they came out with this. They teased it a little bit, but everybody was saying we want a 3-lug, we want a 3-lug, we want a 3-lug. And for those of you guys that don't know, a traditional 2-lug action has 2 lugs and then it rotates the bolt 90 degrees, whereas this is a 3-lug and it rotates 60 degrees. So we'll compare it. I'm showing you a clip right now comparing a 2-lug 90 degree versus a 3-lug 60 degree action. And you can see that, and of course, we are clear for all the internet range safety officers out there, but for the purposes of angles, what you guys are looking at is the bolt only lifts 60 degrees, whereas a 90 degree it would be coming up a little higher. Now, for some people, certain scopes they claim could have interference, but the reality is like the 90 degree action is the most popular action clone. There's just not a lot. I mean, yeah, it does give you a little bit more clearance, so there is that. However, what a lot of people wanted with a 360 was it to match their centerfire action. So for me, I was traditionally running a 2-lug 90-degree action, so the Vudoo V22, the regular one, made sense. However, when I built my precision centerfire rifle, which you can check that video out up there, that was a Terminus Zeus action, which is a 60-degree give or take throw. So I wanted this to kind of match that similar throw. And this is a perfect pair for that. Now, some of the complaints of a 3-lug is that being that it's a shorter throw, you're doing everything in this 60 degrees versus 90 degrees. Some people have complained that it is a heavier bolt lift. So I'll dry fire here, and there's just this little bit, and then I'm cocking as I'm lifting, and then I can complete the cycle. I fire. And yeah, it is a little heavier than the 2-lug, just because we're doing more cocking in that shorter throw distance, if you will. Now wait, I know what you're saying. Can you dry fire a rimfire gun? Yes, a Vudoo you can. They've designed their bolt and their firing pin to make sure that it's safe for dry firing. So no need to freak out. It's okay to dry fire a Vudoo, I promise. So why you would pick a 3-lug versus a 2-lug is probably because it would match your center fire gun. So if your center fire gun, like a theqa, the Terminus, Ultimatum, there's several other popular 3-lug center fire actions, and you want your rimfire gun to match, great. Now some people have said, well, you can be a little quicker with only having to lift 60 degrees versus 90. I don't think that is the main argument to go one way or the other. You just might have a preference. Maybe you do want a little bit clearance around the scope. But I've seen a lot of guys who run a 90-degree action faster than I can run a 60-degree action. So I don't think that is the main argument, but you may just have that preference. Now, some people do like the newer action. Now, this is the latest version of the action, and another feature that you're going to get with this is their new bolt release. It is pivoting in a vertical versus the horizontal pivot of my earlier generation V22. Now, is this a little bit more robust? Yes. Is it anything that I'm really that worried about? No. My original Vudoo is just fine. And so all we would do then is we would press this, and now we can take the bolt out. So we'll take a closer look here at the bolt in a second. Externally, the action is the same footprint. It's using that 700 short action footprint. Now, is it just a modified clone of a 700? No, this is a purpose-built action that was designed from the ground up to be a rimfire action. It just so happens that the external footprint is the same as Remington 700, so that way it fits Remington 700 triggers. It fits the variety of Remington 700, chassis and stocks that are available for that platform, along with scope bases, all sorts of other stuff. So that was really, really smart. And that's most custom actions. Pretty much every custom action is based on a Remington 700 footprint, just because that's what is kind of standard, if you will. But like I said, the internal stuff, it's all ground up, meant to be a precision rimfire rig. Now, one thing that I did unique to this build versus my other build was that I had them use their single stage Flavio Trigger. And wow. So the Flavio Trigger uses a unique sear geometry, basically 90-degree sear surfaces that it's crazy. Yeah, crazy, right? Let's get a close-up. That thing does not move. It's nuts. I mean, it is sick, the trigger on this thing. Now, this was originally designed for their bench rest models, and because of the unique geometry, it is incredibly crisp. Now, I have mine adjusted right around 1.25 pounds, and it is consistent. At first, I actually thought, this is actually too light. I kind of missed that second stage, so I could have, that first stage take up, break at the second stage, which is what I have in my other competition guns. But it's crazy. It is, for a competition gun, it is the best trigger I have ever experienced in my life. Light, crisp, truly, like if there ever was the prolific glass rod break, this would be it. It is just an amazing trigger. Like, it's crazy. Now, it does add a little bit to the cost, and because it is unique sear geometry with the cocking piece and all that stuff, it does not allow you to then swap it to a regular trigger. So if you ordered your barreled action with the Flavio Trigger, you do have to kind of, be married to that setup. If you wanted to swap to a traditional trigger, you would have to reach out to Vudoo and get an additional piece of hardware for the cocking piece, I believe, because that's what is part of the magic that makes all of this happen. But wow, I'm blown away by the trigger. Now, there are times when, especially when I was new with, the gun, that I would be practicing and all of a sudden then I would be like, okay, oh, yeah, because it was so light, there's no take up, there's no creep. So it definitely takes some getting used to. So what I found was getting into position, and once I was getting ready, I would basically find the side of the trigger and then index, and then I could go ahead and break my shot, because there were times when I would just go ahead and start to index my finger, and because the trigger was so light and so crisp, I would send the round down range earlier than planned. So it definitely takes some practice if you are going to consider the Flavio Trigger. But like I said, you can see, and I'm trying to get the best angle for you possible, but as soon as you start applying that weight, it's nuts. It barely moves, like barely moves, and you can barely feel that. It's nuts. It is absolutely a phenomenal trigger. However, if you wanted to, you could order it with whatever trigger your choice. So my other gun has a Geisley. You can use a Bix & Andy, you can use a Timney, you could use a Trigger Tech, you know, whatever popular Remington 700 style triggers you want to use, it can use with their action. But if you're looking for a bench rest model or a competition model, that Flavio might be worth checking out, but it's crazy light and crazy crisp. Let's talk about the bolt here in a little bit of detail. So here is a close-up of the bolt, and it is a mid-lug design similar to the other one, but you can see here there's 1, 2, and then 3 lugs. And if we look at it from this profile here, you can see the 1, 2, and 3 lug design. And that's what allows it to have, you know, that shorter throw, is that we have these 3 lugs in a triangular format. We do have the same Vudoo dual extractors for reliable extraction, and then the firing pin design. And then what I did a little differently on this one is I went with a ball bolt knob instead of the traditional bolt knob. Again, I just wanted to try something a little bit different. Do I have a preference one way or the other? Not really, but what's nice is that the shank is threaded, so you can swap out bolt knobs if you so desire. The 360 is the new Gen 2 bolt. And there's great videos that Vudoo puts out that really kind of dives more into the technical aspects. So I'm going to post a link to those in the description so you can check those out. But this is the latest version. And you can see that the shroud is a little different from my earlier generation. I believe this is a Gen 1 bolt body on my original V22. So is one better than the other? It's just an upgrade that they've done over time, kind of an evolution. But what's nice is that in here, there's basically a small .050 set screw. Once you loosen that up, you can disassemble. I'm not going to do that. They, again, have great videos covering that for cleaning, disassembly, stuff like that. But the nice Gen 2 bolt body is, I find, a nicer upgrade. Now, if we compare it again to the traditional, you can see that the bolt bodies are very similar. However, with the 90 degree, we have the 2 lugs on both sides of the bolt body. Again, mid-lug design, whereas we have the 3 lug here. So very similar designs. It's just a preference if you want that 90 versus, you know, 60 degree throw. They're both great, really great actions. They just give you a little bit of variety to choose. But you can see the different knob options. Obviously the tactical style versus the ball. The tactical style is a little bit longer. And with the 90 degree, I actually do prefer this just because it puts it out a little bit further away from the scope. But with the 60, I didn't find that to be an issue. My general reliability has been nothing short of what I would expect from my Vudoo. I have right around 1,500 rounds through this particular one. I'm actually probably just over that. I'm on my, you know, on my 4th brick of ammo that I've ran through this. Now, as far as ammo and accuracy, I'll talk about that in the next section, but reliability has been great. Now, I did have a couple of stoppages that were magazine related, so we'll talk about those here in the magazine section. But the stoppages that I did have were, number one, because of me. I know there were a couple times when I short stroked or short cycled the action, which then basically means that I didn't come back all the way to get reliable extraction and ejection. One of the things I have noticed with this particular gun versus my other gun is that I do need to really make sure I have proper cycling velocity. So if I just come back slowly, slowly, slowly with the bolt, or if I'm kind of just coming back, whatever, sometimes I wouldn't get as reliable of ejection as if I, you know, get that proper cycle of the action, which is, you know, good technique 101, but that was on me. And usually I was distracted trying to focus on something else while running the action. But when I run the action with appropriate velocity and technique, gun ran just fine. Now, one other thing that I did notice with the 360 in particular, and I don't recall this being an issue with my V22, is that I did notice early on, I'm not going to say it was sticky, but it definitely wasn't as buttery smooth as it is now. It definitely felt like it required a little bit of break-in. Now, talking to another owner of a 360, they said, yep, after about the first 1,000 rounds, give or take, it smoothened right up. But I did notice, you know, or they said that they noticed the same thing on theirs, that at first when they're cycling the action, it just, you know, wasn't quite as smooth. So it definitely needed a little bit of break-in. But right now, I mean, it's like grease. it's smooth. I mean, it is just a smooth action. But that did take some time. So if you look at the various forums, user groups, whatever, some people just said, hey, put your oil of your choice on there, run the action a bunch, run it through a bunch of rounds, dry fire, whatever. Other people recommended like Lucas Extreme oil as their preferred like break-in oil. So I did try some of the Lucas Extreme. And like I said, after about that 1,500 rounds, plus some dry fire, plus some cycling, it is now a really, really smooth action. Just as smooth as my other one. So I just noticed that on the 360, that right up front, maybe it's the Cerakote, maybe it's the tolerances, I don't know. But I did notice it definitely needed some cycling. So if you do get one and you find right away that, hey, you know, it's definitely not quite as smooth as you'd expect, just put some rounds through it or cycle it a bunch and it'll kind of burnish right in and break right in. But otherwise, it's been a very, very reliable rifle. I would not hesitate at all to bring this to a match. In fact, this is probably going to be my match rifle going forward just because it matches my centerfire gun. And then the older V22 will kind of be a backup or a loaner that I've given out to friends or whatever in the past. So absolutely love it as far as the reliability, so long as I run the action right. Now let's talk about magazines, because I did have a couple of feeding issues that I did determine were magazine related. Now I've come up with quite the collection of Vudoo mags, owning a few of them. And one of the things that I would highly recommend that you do is number your mags. So I have this one numbered, you know, just use a Sharpie paint marker and number your magazines. But one of the things that I noticed, particularly on the newer generation, because they have changed molds slightly, and I don't know if it was materials or, you know, parts or whatever, but I did notice on a couple of the newer mags that I received with the 360 that I would have a feeding issue. And because I numbered my mags, I was able to isolate it to the magazine. Now, Vudoo customer service was awesome. They replaced the mags and just said, hey, just destroy the old ones. And then what I did is I actually took the guts out of those faulty ones and just kind of kept them as spares. So I do have a couple of spare followers, springs, locking plates, because it was actually with the body there. The round would basically just drag on those lips there, and it would cause a feeding issue. Now, what's cool about the magazine is that it is a controlled round feed, so that way when the round does come up, the design of the magazine causes the round to come up, and then it is grabbed by the extractor claws of the bolt and then guided into the chamber. Now, what's cool about that is that projectile does not then rub on a feeding ramp or get marred or damaged or anything like that during feeding. We want that projectile integrity to maintain itself, so that way we can get the most accurate, you know, round possible, and that's what this magazine does. Now, here's the cool part about the magazine is that the external footprint of it is the same as an AICS centerfire. So all your bottom metal, chassis, things like that that use a standard AICS mag will take this mag just fine, and it has a lot of surface area to really secure with. Some of the other rimfire actions on the market use a very small magazine that's basically the size of the round, and then you have this really small mag well, but again, there's, you know, more wobble and play and things like that. So with this, it fits your standard centerfire mag holders, bottom metal, all that other stuff, and these have been generally really reliable mags. Again, number your mags so that you know if you do have a problem magazine related. Now, one of the other things with chassis I will know is that ride height of the magazine in the chassis is pretty important. A lot of chassis have adjustable mag catches, or sometimes people will have to fit their mag catch to make sure that the magazine is riding in the appropriate height. Now, if you think about it, with a centerfire action, the feeding hole of the barrel, if you will, is the size of the bolt face, right? So the projectile is this cone, cylindrical shape that has a huge hole to go into. Whereas rimfire, because it's a straight taper, we have to get that projectile perfectly lined up. So making sure that the barrel and the magazine height, so everything can feed, is much more critical with rimfire. So it does take a little bit more tuning if you are planning on swapping, you know, your chassis back and forth. Another quick note on mags, these are the standard 10-round polymer mags, and I actually really, really like these. They're about, you know, 40-ish bucks a piece, but I have a whole bunch of these. I have even more in my shooting bag, and I generally use those as my go-to competition mag. Now, they do also have aluminum mags, which are machined aluminum. These are a little bit more money, and they come in either a 5-round, 10-round, or a 15-round option. Now, truth be told, I generally still run the 10s just because I think they are the most reliable. And if I have had issues, it was probably with this 15-rounder, but it's probably because of loading. You definitely have to make sure you load them properly. And again, Vudoo has videos on all of this. But this is a quality piece of material here that was machined specifically for this magazine. The reality is I personally would just stick to the polymer ones, but that's just a quick note on magazines. Let's talk about accuracy. Everybody always wants to hear, how does it shoot? How does it shoot? And I can say without a doubt, this gun is a shooter. Now, one of the things that, I don't know if you saw on the earlier clip, is I do have a tuner on this particular rifle. Now, this tuner is an EC tuner. It's made by Eric Cortina, who is a phenomenal source of information and a shooter of himself, his own right. You can check his channel out. I'll put a link. But I really like watching his stuff too. But he makes these tuners. Now, I actually won this at a match and I'm experimenting with it. But what it does is there's an inner cone that threads onto the barrel, and then this outer shank threads onto that cone. And then you can adjust this to a certain position, and it affects the barrel harmonics to hopefully improve your groups. Now, I'm still playing with this. I'd like to give it more time before I really say, is it worth it, is it not? But I did test fire the gun without and with, just to kind of see what the differences were. Now, a quick note on accuracy. When I first got the gun and I was, breaking it in and putting some rounds through it, getting it zeroed or whatever, when I was shooting out to like 200-300 yards, I noticed that I was getting some inconsistencies. So a friend was kind enough to let me use their bore scope, and I did have a build-up ring or a lead ring in the barrel that I think was the cause of that. I gave the gun a good cleaning, which I know is something I don't typically do. I don't like cleaning guns, but I gave the gun a good cleaning, and then after the match, kind of went back and I was able to find that the consistency, especially at distance, was much better. Now, up close, 100 yards and in, I didn't really notice any accuracy issues, but at that 300 yards is where I was starting to notice like really consistent inconsistencies. And like I said, once I cleaned it out, it appears it's been fine. I've been able to hit various plates at 300 yards, which is the furthest I was able to test it post, but it definitely appears to have improved. But let's talk about some data. I love showing you guys targets, and I'll put details up on the screen. But right off the bat, accuracy with this gun, 50 yards is where I do my zeroing and my accuracy testing to start with rimfire. It's been a heck of a shooter, and obviously it should be, right? For the money that you're paying, these guns should be very, very accurate. But without a tuner, as you can see here, it really liked Wolf Target. These were a couple of spotters that I was using to re-zero, but this is a 5-shot group with Wolf Target, 5-shot group. Center X is a 5-shot group, so let's just get you some details of some of these targets. So this group right up here, I'm going to put a detail on the screen. 50 yards, 5-shot with no tuner. Group size, center to center, is 0.287 inches, so just over half minute of angle. Another group here is, again, just over half minute, 0.276 center to center, and 0.528 MOA, so really close to a half minute gun, which is very respectable for a rimfire. A lot of people consider rimfire to be sub-minute is absolutely great. So at 25 yards, we'd be looking at those 1/4 inch groups. At 50 yards, we're trying to get 1/2 inch groups. And this one, we're well below that. So I would say this is a shooter. Now, I also did try with some SK long range, and it did appear to like this ammo as well. So here's one group of 0.292 center to center, again, just over half MOA. And this one is 0.291, just over half MOA. So it liked that SK long range, which was great. Now, so as far as accuracy, I really don't have any complaints, but I wanted to start to play with the tuner. So the tuner has different markings on it, and they're numbered. So that way when you find your position, you can jot it down. So basically how it would go is you'd shoot a few rounds, adjust the tuner, shoot a few rounds, adjust the tuner, shoot a few rounds, adjust the tuner, and so on. Now, I did put a paint marker on my barrel. I just used some masking tape, so I have that reference, and then I put a paint marker mark on here. This is where right now I am finding that I'm getting probably the most consistency with Center X, so I just marked it blue, and that way I know in case I take it in and out of my bag if it got bumped or anything like that, but these set screws kind of keep it in place. But basically what I did is I would shoot 3-round groups, make an adjustment, shoot 3-round group, make an adjustment, shoot 3-round group. So you can see here at setting 11, they were opening up. 13 looked really good, basically one hole. 15 started to open up a little bit more. 17, 21, 23, and so on. And it started to, open back up. So then I did it again and started to experiment some more. And, I was basically keeping notes as I was shooting. So then what I would find is after shooting a few groups and kind of letting things settle is that setting number 4 looked really good. So I kind of kept it at number 4 and basically we're getting one hole groups. And then I kind of settled on, right now I think I'm at number 4 for consistency. So where I'm at with number 4 is a .159 inch group at 50 yards was the best. And I can't complain with that at all. So do I think the tuner has some merit? Yes, absolutely I do, because we were also able to get this .203 center to center group at 50 yards with center X. So I definitely think the tuner has merit. I'm gonna experiment with it a little bit more, but right now the gun is shooting really, really well. At 100 yards, it's a little bit tougher with wind and rimfire, things like that, because the one thing that is the inconsistent thing is the ammunition. You'll be shooting really good, but then the crimp on the round might be a little bit different, or the overall length, or whatever it might be, and the rimfire round will then have an outlier or a flyer, which just sometimes happens with rimfire ammunition. But at 100 yards, I was getting sub-minute. So some of my groups were a little over an inch, depending on wind, you know, ballistics, whatever. But when I was getting that consistency, my groups were under an inch at 100 yards, which, again, with a rimfire is very, very respectable. I have a Bartlein Barrel on my new one, and this is a standard, you know, Senduro profile. Different profiles are available, they can work with you, but they were using their Ace barrels, and when I was talking to the crew at Vudoo, they basically just, you know, said the demand is so high they had to add another option, which is why some of them are shipping with Bartlein barrels. Now, I haven't really noticed a huge accuracy difference between the Ace and the Bartlein. Like I said, this gun shoots really, really well. For whatever reason, part of me feels like my other one is maybe just a smidge more accurate at distance, but that also is because I have more rounds through that and I'm probably more familiar with it. And that one is an Ace barrel, but I really wouldn't feel bad either way. But I have really no complaints about accuracy. I mean, look at the groups, that speaks for themselves. Let's talk pricing and availability, because that is the tough part right now. These rifles are not cheap. They are in super high demand. As of right now, Q1 2022, when I'm publishing this video, and I've had this for like, I don't know, 9 months, 8 months, give or take. So I've got a lot of rounds and a lot of experience through it. Right now, current lead time is 4.5 to 5 months. So you are going to be waiting for a rifle. You can find a dealer that might have a barreled action in stock or a rifle in stock, but you can order it with either a barreled action, which is just that, meaning you're getting the action that's already married to a barrel, or you can get it in a complete rifle configuration. They are available in left or right hand. They do have even Magnum models available, which someday I would love to get a 22 Magnum. I think that'd be a really cool critter getter. But barrel actions are going to be right around $2,000. Complete rifles are going to be right around the mid 2,000 and on up, depending on what stock or chassis, trigger, all sorts of stuff. You're going to spend a lot of money. Is it unrealistic to expect to spend $3,000 on a custom high-end precision rimfire from Vudoo? You could do it very easily, depending on, again, the stock and trigger. So check out their webpage. They do have different models available, different stocks, different chassis. And if there's something that you want that they don't have, chances are if you call them, they will work with you. Customer service, I have experienced, has been really, really good. My final thoughts. If you were looking for a high-end precision rimfire gun, whether it be for serious critter hunting, pest control, you just like nice things, or you're looking for an absolute rock-solid, dependable platform for competition shooting, there's a reason why the people at the top of the podiums are generally shooting Vudoo guns. Are there a few other actions out there? Yep, there sure are. And I think competition is a good thing. It's only going to help everything get better and everything evolve, so that way all of the companies stay competitive. But if you go to a major match, there's going to be a common theme, and that is going to be a Vudoo V22, whether it's the traditional or the 360, which is what I have here. You're going to see a lot of Vudoos, and with good reason. These guns are accurate, they are reliable, and they perform. But that comes at a price. There's no getting around it. Quality definitely comes at a price. But if you're looking for the best, I think you would be hard pressed to find something better. Now, I get it. Certain people in the comments are going to say, you know, their brand or their action or whatever. That's totally fine. Everybody has a different opinion, and there's a reason why there are Ferraris and Lamborghinis, right? And this is definitely one of them, which I don't know the difference between a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, but this is one of those amazing supercars, and it is going to perform as a supercar should. Not to mention the customer service is great, but when you're spending that kind of money, it should be. But every time I've called Vudoo, a real person has answered the phone. When I've emailed, they've been very responsive. And even spending some time with the staff, has just always been a positive experience at a match or at other events. So I really do like working with good people in the industry who also happen to make some really good products. So if you see me at a match, it's going to be shooting a Vudoo. I absolutely love my rimfire rigs. To check them out, search online for Vudoo Gunworks. That's the best way, and then you can find either a dealer that might have one in stock or you can purchase one direct. And if you have any questions, reach out to them. Their staff will be more than happy to help you out. And please tell them Dave from Guns and Tactics sent you. I really would appreciate the reference. That'll do it for this episode. If you guys have any questions about this or anything else firearms related, go ahead and sound off in the comment section below, or you can send us an email to the email address shown below to get on our monthly QA episode. That's at the end of the month where I answer your questions, and we also give out a prize. If you guys like the content, please like, share, and subscribe. We really need to get that algorithm up. And if you are so inclined and feel generous enough to support the channel, you can also support us on Patreon. Very simple. Easy to do. You can support us every month, and that's going to help us keep the lights on so we can keep making more content like this. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day. We work really hard to make content that we hope you as a shooter would enjoy. Subscribe to our channel, check out our featured videos and playlists, and if you have a question firearms related, go ahead and send an email to the address shown on the screen to be entered into our monthly QA series.